Hey guys, welcome back. If this is your first time here, I'm Neil, the Adventures Investor, and on this channel we talk all things investing, property, shares, anything in that sort of nature. Today I'm going to be talking about my second property that I bought, and this is in Queenstown, New Zealand, the adventure capital of the world. I bought this property in October 2013, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my thoughts behind this purchase, why I like this purchase. I'm going to break down the price, the return, and I still currently hold this property as well, so I'll talk a bit more about that and what I could do subsequently after purchasing this property, which is one of the reasons why I sort of think it's one of my best property investments I've ever made anyway. And I'll show you for the following reasons. I'm going to be using a website called oneroof.co.nz just to run through the numbers. This is a great resource to use if you're looking at investing in property yourself, or you're just trying to get a deeper understanding of a particular area when you're looking at investing in property. You don't always have to invest within your hometown or within the city where you live. I definitely recommend casting that net a lot wider. That's opening up to a lot more sort of areas of potential growth. And with all the resources we have online these days, it's amazing. You can do so much research just from the laptop at home, just sitting on the couch, sitting on the dining room table there. You can get a lot of knowledge, especially over the last sort of 5 years. I find a lot more readily available information. I used to use Quotable Value and a property website called homes.co.nz, but now I find I'm using oneroof.co.nz if I'm trying to research anything about a particular area in New Zealand or properties that I've interested in New Zealand. Great resource. So that's what we're going to be using today, so to run through the numbers of this particular property that I purchased. Just a couple of quick things before we jump into it. Anything I talk about today is purely educational, okay? Do your own research, especially if you're investing in property, okay? Or talk to a financial advisor or mortgage brokers or property specialists or anything along that sort of ballpark, because we're talking about a large amount of money, especially if you're investing in property in Australia or New Zealand. Prices, sort of $500,000 to $1 million sort of thing, depending on where you're buying and what city or whatnot. But generally property is pretty expensive both in Australia and New Zealand. So I highly recommend doing a lot of research on this area, or wherever you're looking at potentially buying as well. Let's say you're not buying in your own town, or wherever you're wanting to potentially buy an investment property. Definitely recommend doing a lot of research and running the numbers, making sure you have a solid understanding of the numbers, what you're going to be getting back in rental return. Does it make it worth taking on this investment? So definitely do a lot of research around this, or talk to people that are pretty specialised in this area, and then also do your own research on this as well. We're just going to quickly run over 3 things that I like to look for when investing in property, and then we'll jump into the numbers for the property that I was talking about. So first thing I like to do is I like to buy cash flow positive properties, okay? This is properties that, all the rent that I receive from the monthly or fortnightly or however often you get paid rent is enough to cover, the mortgage, the interest, the, any sort of niggly insurance payments, or a little bit of repairs and maintenance. And I like this from day one, okay? I don't like this from 5 years down the line. So the minute I take ownership of the property, I want the rent that I receive to cover all the bills. There's a lot of trend around sort of negatively geared property, especially here in Australia, where you can offset your taxes and that sort of thing. Personally, I don't use this at all. But if that's a strategy that you want to use, then do a lot more research around that. And I think you'll find it's probably better off to stick to cash flow positive properties. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, do your own research. If you think that's the way to go for you, then that's the way for you to go. But personally, I prefer cash flow positive properties. I like buying an investment that puts money into my pocket rather than I have to physically top it up every week or every fortnight or whatever. So that's just something I like to look for when investing in property. Is cash flow positive properties. So I've done another video on that, so check that out. We'll do some research on that if you don't understand exactly what I mean by cash flow positive properties. Number 2 on the list is I prefer to buy property at below the intrinsic value, or below the market value of that property, okay? This is something that I've always sort of done, and I love a good bargain, as does everyone. This is something I tried to pull over into property as well. Especially in New Zealand, I used to use the rateable value, or the government valuation, whatever that was. I try and buy it below that. And people, you can't do that. There's always properties selling out there below those sort of rateable values. But then quite often they're not in desirable locations as well. So bear that in mind. Just because it's under RV doesn't mean it's a great buy, because it might be in, not the best sort of growth area within the country. So that's just another thing I always sort of look. And look in the old cliche, you want the worst house on the best street. That's a great sort of line to use as well. But definitely, look for property, especially if you're, handy, you're a bit more of a hands-on sort of a person, then, look for property where you can do some light renovation, maybe a paintwork, tidy up the yard, maybe even replace the kitchen, replace the bathroom or something. and it, the property could be selling at 50 to 100 grand below market value just because it needs a tidy up, or it's a bit tired, hasn't had any maintenance work done for maybe 30 years or something. So these are the sort of properties that I like to look for. And I also like to look for properties that I see a lot more sort of growth or future potential, things that I can use, in the next 5-10 years. Let's say it's a big section, you're buying a property and it's an old quarter-acre section. You in the years down the line, you could look at potentially subdividing that section, putting another house on the back or the front, or depending on the layout, or removing the house and putting 3 townhouses, or gives you a lot more options. Okay, so look at those sort of things. Sort of hidden value there that's sort of not maybe in the price. So that's other things that I like to look at as well when investing in property. And also, good. What's the area like? Is it close to schools? Is it what's the job market like in that area? Is it close to the supermarket? Is it close to the cafes, or whatever it may be? So these are all sort of things you want to look at when investing in property as well. And also, I think it's 20% deposit is a good down payment to pay on a investment property, especially in Australia and New Zealand. Generally, most of the time they want you to have a 20% deposit. This way, you're not having to pay lender's mortgage insurance, okay? Which is basically just covering the bank until you build up 20% equity within the property, giving you that 20% deposit. So it's just sort of throwing your money away. It's not paying off your mortgage. It's not going into your property. So yeah, that's like I highly recommend getting that 20% deposit together before investing in property as well. So that's just sort of top 3 things. But if you don't understand any of that, then drop it in the comments below and I'll try and, give you a bit more insight onto it. And I may even do another video a bit more on just certain things that I like to look at before investing in property. But let's jump in and check out my numbers over at oneroof.co.nz. So oneroof.co.nz, I highly recommend this website. I'm going to be leaving the link in the description below if you want to check out and do your own research of any property in New Zealand as well. Great tool. I think it's probably slightly better than Homes and QV.co.nz. Just because it has everything on it, it's all nicely laid out, good snapshot. This website's only been around for, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years. It wasn't around 5-6 years ago. Like I said, I was using QV and homes.co.nz, which was giving you similar sort of stuff as well, but this is all on one. It's all free, totally free to jump on here, and you can check out all the recent sales in the area, what the rateable value was. QV used to try and charge you for a lot of this, so I like getting on here. It's all for free, and it's just super easy to open an account. So this is the property I'm looking at today. Number 101066 Frankton Road, Frankton, Queenstown. So it gives you a quick satellite view here of the complex of units. Not a very good picture there, but you get the general gist. So we're going to scroll down just to show you a few key things here. Like quick, you don't really have to know much about this. If you want to list your property or you want to talk to a real estate agent, you give those guys a bell. This is about the property itself. So when it was built, the title, the construction, the condition, the title there, like I said, and the floor area, 72 meters squared, point of view out to the water. The rating valuation. Let's have a quick look at this here. This is what I'm talking about. So when I'm buying property, especially in New Zealand, I like to buy below the rateable value or the rateable valuation. And the last one on this property was done in July 2017, coming in at 340,000. This is New Zealand dollars. And here it says increased by 30% compared to 2014. So that's a pretty big jump in the space of 3 years. Every 3 years, all councils they update all their latest rating valuations. So that's something to bear in mind if you're buying a particular property and maybe it's coming up for a new rateable value. It's getting to the end of that last sort of 3-year mark, then you could be in for a chance that the property may have gone up as well. This is when properties generally sell above their rateable value if it's coming up to a new rating valuation period. But like I said earlier, I prefer to either buy it at the rateable value or even slightly below if I can. But it's quite hard to find those sort of properties, especially in good growth areas like Queenstown. Predominantly in Queenstown, prior to me buying this, I'd been looking at a lot of properties online, and I've gone down there a couple of times and looked through a few different properties. I was looking at a house originally, 5-bedroom house with a 2-bedroom standalone unit as well, and the current rateable value at the time I think was around 750,000. And the asking price was 550,000. So, it was 200 grand below the rateable value. And then the rateable valuation was due the next following year as well. So that would have been a good buy. I didn't end up buying that property, I ended up buying this one, but I was a little bit scared to take on that amount of dent. I was going into this mortgage by myself, and it was just a lot of money to take on, so I didn't actually end up taking that one on. But in hindsight, probably would have been the better move to make, but, hindsight's 2020. Anyway, so we'll keep carrying on with this. So, yeah. Rateable value to 340,000, land value 92, and 248,000 for the building itself. Then this is the property history. Okay, this is last updated 3rd of November this year. same sort of stuff there. This is when the property was sold. This is when I bought it in October 2013 for $215,000. And this is what I'm talking about. The rateable value assessment at the time was $240,000. So it gave me sort of that $25,000 instant equity. This is in the eyes of the bank. Whether or not, you could flip that house the next day for $240,000, probably not. But property was starting to pick up a lot in Queenstown at the time. It was just sort of come through the GFC, and they got smacked around. A lot of property in Queenstown had lost maybe 30-40% of its value prior to those sort of lofty highs prior to the GFC. So it was just starting to recover from that. And then you can see here, the guy that I bought it off, he paid $230,000 before November 2006. So he actually lost 15 grand over the space of time that he had that property, that's unfortunate timing. He bought at the all-time high, and then he sold, pretty much at the lows. And then if he'd held on to it, but I mean, that's property. It's very hard to know what you get into. And then there was the property was built in 95 there. A little bit of a map on the area. If you don't know Queenstown, Frankton is slightly out of Queenstown, out close to the Queenstown airport here. There's a lot of development that's gone in here the last 5 years with Pack and Save and Kmart's, and there's a whole big shopping complex and everything in there. But this is one of the main intersections as you're coming into Queenstown. Massive, nice views out here. There's a McDonald's and a BP and all sorts of different little shops, little bottle store there, all in this sort of area. And then this is the managed complex just in there. It's quite a busy little street. So you definitely hear the planes and you hear the traffic zipping past. Little brief overview of the suburb there. Market insights here. You can see what the property value has been doing over the last sort of 5 years or so. So 5-year change, we've got 31% there. And then we've got the recently sold properties in the area. So if you wanted to look at other properties, but then you've got to compare them to the property that you're looking at. It's no good really looking at a house if you're looking at a unit, or vice versa. You want to look at something as close to what you're looking at potentially buying. So that's something to bear in mind as well when you're looking at comparable sales within the area. And if there's nothing in the direct area, then sort of cast that net a little bit wider, see what things are selling, maybe for in Queenstown, so that's something as well to keep an eye out when you're looking at investing in property. And here's all the different numbers. Nothing in my particular complex that has sold recently. There is, I think from memory, there's about 25 units within my complex. So there was always sort of, every year or so there'd be someone buying or selling a unit out of the complex, which I like to keep tabs on as well, just to see what they're selling for as well. And then this is similar properties, similar to this. Some of these, as you can see, some of them are similar, some of them are not. Like this is the showroom. A lot of these all by negotiation. But let's quickly scroll back up to here. So here we have the, probably sold for $215, rateable at the time $240, and then $260. This is the rateable value coming at 2014. I was traveling at the time, but then I got back to New Zealand. It was, I think it was early 2015, and then I was wanting to buy another property in New Zealand at the time. So I went and chatted to the bank, and then they said, yep, we're happy to give you another loan for $150,000, which wasn't much at the time, but I still made it work. And I found a particular property in Owakuni in the central part of the North Island that I really liked, which I subsequently bought. And I withdrew $30,000 equity from this property. So if you look at the current numbers there, so when I bought it for $215 and then the rateable value, there's a $45,000 difference there between the two. So I withdrew $30,000 of that equity. So for the next deposit, I didn't actually have to put any money in myself. I just withdrew equity from this particular property, and then I bought this property here, 8 Moore Street in Owakuni. This was a 1/4 acre section at the time. I then had gone on to subdivide it after this. And this is what they're currently estimating it at, $320. So we'll scroll down, same sort of stuff here. Land area at the time, like I said, it was 1/4 acre at the time, but then I subdivided it. Cross out of that one. Ruapehu, freehold, when it was built. So it was a bit of an old house. It was an old weatherboard home, real solid house though. Rateable value there, guys, again, increased by 72% compared to 2017. So huge growth in Owakuni over the last few years. And this is when I brought it here in May 2015 for $150,000. And then I pulled that 30 grand out of Queenstown. So that gave me that 20% deposit. Like I talked about earlier, I always like a 20% deposit when I'm investing property. Saves me paying those mortgage insurance payments. Rateable value at the time was $185,000, so that was below the rateable value. Like I said earlier, I always try and buy properties below that rateable value if I can. I haven't always stuck to that rule, but I generally like to try and stay as close to that as I can. Some people don't put much stock in it because it's real blanket sort of rateable value. You know, the property could have a swimming pool or a massive shed or something that the council hasn't counted into that rateable value, or massive views, or, you know, it could be a good reason why the property's selling $100,000 or $200,000 above the rateable value. But just general rule of thumb is you want it to be as close to that as possible. I then actually sold this property, or the front half of the section, last year for $263,000 there in January 2019, and then the rateable value of the property come in at $320,000. So I probably could have held on to that, but I needed to pull the money out and put into something else. And I still currently own the back section as well. But I might make another video about that where I talk more about the subdivision and how work the numbers around that. So that's just a real quick, brief overview of how you can sort of recycle your deposit from that original purchase. I've actually subsequently bought another couple of properties from that initial purchase of this unit in Queenstown. So I hope you got some value from that, guys. If you've got any questions or any dramas or anything I covered off in there, just drop it in the comments below, and I'll do. All right, guys, I hope you got some value there from going over the numbers of my property there. If you've got any questions or any dramas or anything I covered off on today, drop it in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. I'd love to get a conversation going on around this. You guys currently invest in property? What sort of strategies are you using? Are you using cash flow positive or growth or negative, or, well, you know, where are you sort of sitting? Are you buying your first property? Are you buying your 10th property? Where are you sitting on that property investment sort of ladder? Where do you see the market at the moment, especially in Australia and New Zealand? Do you think we're sort of getting to the end of that boom phase, or we potential bubble territory, or where do you see that sort of, where do you see the market currently at the moment? And it's always hard to know exactly where we are, and in hindsight, oh, it was clear, it was a bubble. Or, you know, everyone's always sort of claiming these things, oh, I knew it was after the fact. But anyway, that's just that. And if you enjoyed today's video, guys, and you got some value from it, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that like button, okay? It helps me out a lot, especially as a new growing YouTube channel. Helps me out tons, and it doesn't cost you a cent or anything. I'm not trying to stitch you up into some scheme or something. It's just a simple hit that like button, and if you want to see some more videos like this moving forward, then hit that subscribe button and you'll be the first to know when the next video drops. All right, guys, stay safe out there, and we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers, guys.